All right. Pray for Brother John on natural and spiritual Israel.
Thanks, Brother Dan. Welcome back. I hope you're suitably refreshed, rested, and we can go one more time with some more sequences of creation. What do we see in the first session? What we saw was God speaks his name, and this is one representation of his name, and things come to life. And that's the manner in which he says he created the world. And when he's really talking about the world, what he's after is you. What he's after is your heart, your dedication, you as a disciple. That's the point of this style of development. And that's what we saw. That's the sequence of creation that we all know about. And it's such a pity in a way that Genesis chapter 1 ends up being more than anything just a battleground between creation and evolution and people throwing chairs at each other, and none of that is going anywhere useful. See the spiritual pattern that's described. So, if God creates an individual disciple, it makes sense. He wants to create an entire nation. We're social creatures. He wants to create a people that go together. And he does. He creates his people, Israel, in its natural environment. And we'll read about that in Exodus and the Numbers. That's where we're going to be biblically, to see God create his people. And what I'm going to suggest to you, and what I'm going to try and prove, is that God uses this sequence to create his people. And I hope you'll see that the evidence isn't forced. But at the same time, because we've got a lot of material to get through, we'll see Jesus. Jesus is the express image of God. And if he's the express image of God, then he's also a creator. You cannot be a good representation of a creator unless you're a creator. And so Jesus himself also creates a people, is authorized to create a people, and he creates the ecclesia. He creates spiritual Israel. And we'll see that principally in the letters that he writes to those early churches in Revelation chapters 2 and 3. So we're going to look at cycle number 2 and sequence number 6 in this talk. Let's make a start. Let's jump in. Here we go. Natural Israel. And natural Israel is created essentially at the time of the Exodus. That's obvious, right? Because Israel aren't a nation. They're a sublayer of slaves. And it's through Moses and Aaron that God releases Egypt's sublayer of slaves and brings them out into the desert and makes them a people of their own. Simple show of hands, and I imagine many, many hands will go up. Are you familiar with the Exodus story? The wilderness wandering? Great, nice to see lots of hands. Okay, you're familiar with it. Were you taught, or have you since seen, that it's a one-to-one mapping of the creation sequence? Great, then I'm not wasting your time, right? Because I'm serious. I don't want to present stuff that's already so well known that you sit there going, I know that. Good, I'm glad it's new. There'll always be something new in the Bible. We will not exhaust God's wisdom. We won't get near the bottom, I'm sure. Let's see how God created Israel. In other words, it's the Exodus story you've known. Depending on what community you were raised in, it's quite possible this is the story you've known since you were a child, and I've known this story since I was a child, but I'm enabled to see it quite differently. Let's start with day 1. Let there be light. It starts with light, or in fact, even a precursor of light. Before Israel came out of Egypt, there are 10 plagues. What are plagues numbers 9 and 10? Go. Darkness. Darkness and death. Coincidence? Right? Genesis 1 showed you. God said, let there be light, and he separated the light from the darkness because you must have light to live. In the darkness you will die. And it starts with the last 2 plagues here. Stretch out your hand, Moses, towards heaven, so that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be felt, but all the Israelites had light where they lived. I shall separate light from darkness, and my people will be in the light, and the people of the country of death shall be in the darkness. I separate light from darkness. And if we're sensitive to God's name, we would start to think, hey, he just separated light from darkness. I wonder. And in case you didn't notice it, God says, let me get your attention. I'll just do it again. And they're led out by the pillar of fire. But there's something rather weird and wonderful about this pillar of fire, because it actually sheds light on one side and darkness on the other side. The pillar of fire came between Egypt and the army of Israel, and the cloud was there with the darkness on the Egyptian side, and it lit up the night on the Israelite side, so that the one army or the one peoples did not come near the other all night. Light for Israel, darkness for Egypt. I've created a pillar of light, and it separates the light from the darkness, and it separates the people of light from the people of darkness. At this point, we should say, okay, fine, I'm listening, I get it, I see what's happening, I see what's coming. The plague of darkness, the pillar of fire, the light. Day one. There is how God begins to form Israel. And now, we can cheat, right? Even if you don't have the story in your memory, here's the story. We've done that. So now, we're going to do that. So what's the next story of the Exodus? The crossing of the division of waters, right? And you can probably in your mind go through the whole Exodus story and finish it in the next 30 seconds in your head, right? Just think about those 6, you've got it. That's it, right? Let's do it more slowly so we're all on the same page. There's going to be a division of waters, and there's going to be a separation of life and death. Life is going to be drawn out of death. How? God baptizes Israel. Am I cheating by throwing in the word baptizes because it matches my model in a lovely way? No, because it's not me that says it. I have no credibility. But the Apostle Paul does. And that's what he said. Our ancestors, says Paul, talking about Exodus story, were all under the cloud and all passed through the Red Sea. They were all baptized in the cloud and in the sea. There were waters above that were fresh water. There were waters beneath, which was the Red Sea, the sea water. There was, in fact, a division of waters. Now, when I read these words in Corinthians, for most of my life, I was like, why does he keep going on about the cloud as well as the sea? And I think I heard someone say, it's the Red Sea, right? The Red Sea divides, right? They go down to the bottom of the Red Sea on dry land. They come up out of the sea, as it were, and the water's closed. That's baptism. You don't need the cloud, I used to think. But now I realize why Paul insists that you understand they weren't baptized in the Red Sea alone. It was baptized in the cloud and in the sea. You had to reference both sets of waters. And here's where a lovely little gem comes up. Simple question, how many gods were there? I love that trick question. Try again. By perception, who did the Egyptians think was God? How about Pharaoh? Oh yeah, him. Right. Pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was a god. Now, he was just a human man, right? But to the people of Egypt, they thought he was a god. So you're absolutely right, there's only one God in the universe, there's only one God present, but actually by perception there were two. Where was the God of Israel? He was in the cloud, which is fresh water. The living God was in the living water. And where was Pharaoh? In the sea. And what state was he in? The dead God of Egypt is in the dead waters, or the waters of death. So there's actually, this is beautiful, I only saw this several years ago, the God of Israel in the living water is alive. So you have a living God in the living water, and you have a dead God in the dead water. And the Israelites are baptized between the two, plucked out of the waters of death and associated with the one in the cloud above. A living God above, a dead God beneath, and a divide between. Just like creation's day 2. Beautiful match. Really enjoy that. Okay. Light, water, what? Light, water, yes, that's right. Food. That's surely the correct Christadelphian answer. Come on now. Not worried about the So, light, water, bread, light, water, food. We've had the pillar of fire separating light from darkness. We've had the cloud and the sea separating the living people from the dead people. What's going to happen now? Manna, bread from heaven, light, water, bread. And that's really announcing the creation sequence very obviously, right? I'm going to make a people, says God, light, water, bread. The moment you hear light, water, bread, you're like, I know what's going on, light, water, bread. That's the absolute foundational basis of the name of God. I will rain down bread from heaven from you, says God. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. Now remember, down here at level 1, it's all about division. The division of light from darkness, the division of fresh water from salt water, and again, another division of life from death. There's the life, there's the living bread, there's the bread from heaven, which Jesus will of course embody later. There's the bread from heaven, separated from what? There must be a dead food or a deadly food. The desert, well, if you chomp on a bunch of sand, that won't work. Did you ever wonder why you had to have the story of the quail that poisoned everyone? Because the people said, yeah, but we don't want this living bread. If only we had meat like Egypt. We want Egyptian food. We want food from the dead country. We want the food of the dead people. We want the food that causes death. Be careful what you wish for. They didn't ask for it in those terms, but that's what they were saying. God says, wait a minute, I'm separating Israel, Egypt, light and darkness, living water, dead water, living food, and you stand up and say, I want the dead food, please? Okay. So there's a division of food. The bread from heaven to live, or the food from Egypt, the meat like they had in Egypt. So God gave them the meat that they had in Egypt. So the people went out and gathered the quail. But while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, the anger of the Lord burned against the people, and he struck them with a severe plague. That's why that story's there. It's part of the creation sequence. There has to be, on this lower level, light and death, water, life and death, food, life and death. And so, we have a pillar of fire, not darkness. God works in heaven. We have a baptism of cloud, not death in the Dead Sea. God works in the seas. And we have the living manna, not the deadly quail. Life, not death, life, not death, life, not death. We have division, we have division, we have division. And we have acts of division in light, water, bread. This is not difficult. This we have seen before. Brother Dan read it to us just a few moments ago. This is the beginning of the name of God. God is writing out his name in the earth again, and his people are going to be formed by that process. Life's 3 essentials to follow God in his light, in his baptism, and eating his food. So what happens next? It's got to be something to do with light and something to do with that which is going to govern your day and govern your night. Very good. Marvin, a little louder. The law. The law. The very next step, God gives them the law. And you should have anticipated that. We don't even need to read Exodus. We can just read this and tell you what's coming next. God's light to rule. The law which was to rule their day and rule their night. And I love the idea of ruling the day and ruling the night, because the day is when people can see you and when you're in the light. The day is when you stand on a platform and everyone's looking at you and you behave in these wonderful godly ways. But there's also nighttime, isn't there? And not just physical night, just, hey, no one's looking. No one's looking. I don't have 50 brothers and sisters looking at me right now. Do what I want. No, it's to rule your day and rule your night. Moses gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. The Lord our God has shown us his glory and majesty, and we've heard his voice from the fire. So the mountain was also on fire. That's a little echo of the pillar of fire, isn't it, from day one? But is that really the light? I could probably bluff my way past it, and you might not have noticed that in the scripture it actually says, well, this fire actually caused a lot of smoke and darkness. So there wasn't necessarily a lot of light coming out of these flames, but they're clearly an echo of the pillar of fire, so that's good. We've seen the rulership. We've seen the element of judgment or rulership. Where's the light? So God says, okay, the light's missing. I better put some light in. So he puts the light in. Where is it? Remember the story. Excellent. Who said that? I didn't. Very good. Moses' face. Remember? Why would that need to happen? Right? It doesn't need to happen, but God says, you know what? You do need to know that the guy who gave them the law, his face was glowing, shining, not just radiant and healthy like a woman with child, but actually shining so brightly that he terrified everyone and they wouldn't go anywhere near him. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets, his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. They were afraid to come anywhere near him. So Moses' face shone as he delivered the law. So we see light, a light to rule the day and a light to rule the night. Beautiful. Day 4. It's getting easier and easier. What happens next? Golden calf. Ooh, is good. And as a consequence? Death. Death by what? Death by the golden calf. Well, they bashed it in. They did have to drink. I take your point, Sherry. You're absolutely right. He mashed it all up, and they had to drink it out of the river, didn't they? That's excellent. But they got killed. That was bitter. Marvin. Disobedience is an excellent way to introduce that. Yes, it was disobedience, and that's what the golden calf was. You're all on the same page, and it's the right page. What actually killed them? Wasn't quite disease this time, but there were times of plague, for sure. That was with the quail. You've good memory. The Levites. Oh, well, that's right, when they stood up for God. It's even easier, and the answer is in a chapter of the Bible you may have seen. It's called Genesis chapter 1. Who's this guy? No, it was serpents. Oh yeah, it was sin. It was real physical snakes, remember? There was a plague of serpents. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? Think of what an offensive statement that is to God. He's taking them from the land of death, Egypt, to a new nation of life, Israel, and they say, you've brought us up out of Egypt to die. How to miss the point? Egypt is death. The quail was death. Egypt, he's brought you out of Egypt, absolutely, not to die, to live. Then the Lord sent venomous serpents among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The death count was actually over 10,000 humans. The day of the serpent is the day of the serpent. It was rebellion. It was sin. It was idolatry. It was all those things. But the punishment was very literally straight out of Genesis 1, serpents. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a snake, serpent, put it up on a pole. Anyone who's bitten can look at it and live. And this has actually since become a symbol, hasn't it? You recognize this symbol for medical treatment? Someone uses that symbol, I forget which company. The dead serpent on a pole. Who is that? Yeah, it's Christ. Someone said sin, which is astonishingly a good answer. Given that Christ is the answer, that seemed... But surely sin is the living serpent, right? This is the serpent that has been killed. One human only was able to kill the serpent within him. The dead serpent on the cross wasn't that Christ was sin, but Christ was the one who had deadened sin within him. The only one who had deadened sin. So that little jewel comes up right there in Exodus. Salvation comes from looking on the dead serpent. Salvation comes from looking on the cross of Christ. That's been preached as early as Numbers chapter 21, and before, in fact. And there it is. Day 6. Oh. A man in a new form, or a new man. What's the ending of the Exodus story? Joshua, right? A new man to lead them, just like Adam in the Garden of Eden, a new man to lead. A man called Jesus. And I'm not usually fussy about Hebrew words or pronunciations or such, but it is important to know, because I didn't know as an English speaker primarily, this is not a similar name to Jesus' name. It's identically the same name. Both of them are the same Hebrew name. Yeshua, pronounced Joshua in the Old Testament, is Yeshua, pronounced Jesus in the New Testament, because we Anglos are great at messing up names. This is a man called Jesus, who was sent to lead them into the promised land. Take Jesus, the son of none, if you will, a man in whom is the spirit of leadership, just like Adam was given the authority of leadership. Lay your hand upon him, Moses, for he must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them. The new man, Joshua, leads God's people into the promised land. That's day 6. And that's the Exodus story. And the Exodus story was encoded in there, right? Pillar of fire, baptism in cloud and sea, bread from heaven, law to rule their day and night given from the man whose face was shining, serpents, and a man called Jesus to lead them. That's the Exodus story. I don't think I've missed any of the major details. If you think I have, come tell me. And I don't think I've magnified any of these details. I don't think I've taken anything that was unimportant and made it so much more important than it needed to be. If you feel differently, come chat with me. So that's the slide we had. Light, baptism, manna from heaven. To that we add the law given to them by the man whose face shone, the serpents, and the man called Jesus to lead them to the promised land. And theoretically, that would have brought eternal peace. And it never does, because, in one word, because humans, right? Why isn't your ecclesia a haven of nothing other than eternal peace? Because humans, right? It's the same for all of us. But behind all of those details, there, the style of the artist. And not just the style of the artist, but also an excellent explanation of some verses that we'll encounter. Some real new depth and power now to a verse like this. I've raised you up for this very purpose. My name might be proclaimed in the earth. What, are they supposed to talk about him? Yes. But more than that, the fact that they exist. The people led by the fire, baptized in the sea, fed by the manna, who received the law, were bitten by the serpents, and were led by the man called Jesus. That very existence shouts out the name of God. That's what this verse means. This is what the Lord says. He who created you, Jacob, he who formed you, Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. I called you out of Egypt using a particular process that formed you in a way that when people looked at you, they'd say, only one person could have done that. Only Yahweh, the God of Israel, could have done that. That's his name, and I see it. Bring my sons, bring my daughters, everyone who is called by my name. I spell out my name, says God, and my people come to be. And there's the creation sequence, I suggest to you, very clearly embedded in the Exodus story, in the story of God forming his people. So we'll just go back to our little spreadsheet here, sort of a pictorial spreadsheet, the way I prefer things. Sequence number 2, pillar of fire, cloud and sea, bread from heaven, law from the man whose face shone, serpents that bit them and killed them, and a man called Jesus to lead them into the promised land. And from that, we're going to round out this talk by just jumping over, we'll do this one a little bit more quickly, into Revelation chapters 2 and 3. It's going to be a bit of a hit and run, and I'm going to want you to both help me and Make sure I'm on the straight and narrow and I'm not cheating. And the best way you can do that is to have your Bible open in front of you, if you want to. Have your Bible open in front of you if you want, and look at Revelations chapter 2 and 3, because I'm probably going to ask you a couple of questions. And let's see how Jesus makes spiritual Israel. And I'm suggesting to you that he's going to do that via the construction of these 7 churches. Jesus creates a nation. Day 1. I already know what I expect to see. And by the way, if I say go look, this is, I have to, I feel compelled just by my profession to say this. What follows is actually bad science, right? You should never go looking for a pattern. You should just read the data and allow a pattern to come out. Now, that's how I found this, using good science, but what we're going to do now technically is bad science if I tell you to go look for something. But what does Jesus look like to the Ephesians? Or how is the letter to or his letter to Ephesus first couched or phrased? What elements do you see there?
Stars.
Say again?
7 stars in his right hand.
It is light. How is it light? Someone said 7 stars in his hand. Absolutely right. Anything else? 7 stars? Anything else? Is that a coincidence? The words of him, that's Jesus, who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. All done according to light. Might be just a coincidence. It's only one. And what was the threat given to Ephesus if they did not behave? What was going to happen to them? Yes, say it again louder. Their lampstand will be taken away. It's one way to talk about, being separated from God into a position of death, but there's a million ways to do it. But the way it's chosen is, the message is retain your lampstand, repent, and do the works you did at first. Because if you don't, I'll come and remove your lampstand, and you'll be transferred from the light, unfortunately, into the darkness. And that lampstand will be removed from its place. Stars and candlesticks, Ephesus, light. So spiritually, what do we expect to come next? We expect water. Now, what was the principle with the fresh water coming out of the salt water? Life out of? Beautiful. Have a look at the letter to Smyrna. I think it's number 2. What do you see? What text do you find? Yes, say that again louder. Right, Jesus appears to them as the one who was dead and came to life. Well, why doesn't he appear to them as the one holding stars and candlesticks? Is it the same guy? Yes. Why? Because he's moved on to day 2. So now, this is the words not of him holding the lights and the lights. This is the words of him who is life out of death. And again, if we're switched on, we're like, oh, I see exactly where this is going. I know where this is coming from. This is day 2. The words of the first and the last, who died and came to life. Life out of death. That's how Smyrna sees Jesus. It's not only how Smyrna sees Jesus, but happily, because day 2 is always a good day. It's the opposite of day 5, right? Happily, it's how Jesus sees Smyrna. Can you find any evidence that of Smyrna being the same thing? I will give you the crown of life if you persevere. I think there's even a little bit more than that, isn't there? Be faithful unto death. Why would you need to bring death into it? Because this is the life out of death. So you mentioned both parts. Hold on your faithfulness unto death and you will receive life. I know your poverty, but you are rich. That's kind of like a similar thing, right? You seem to be poor, but actually you have riches. Be faithful unto death and I'll give you the crown of life. Not just life, but life out of death. Beautiful. Day 2, Smyrna, excellent. Everything exactly as we would anticipate. Smyrna see Jesus as life out of death, and they themselves are seen as life out of death. We see Jesus building his people. And so, bottom line, the answer is, if we're going to be a true church of God, we need to be all 6 of these. He's stylized each one to show what all churches must be. all of these 6 things. Light, water, what? Bread. Pergamos or Pergamon. What do you see? Manna. Right there. I will give them hidden manna. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a new name. So just as the Israelites had gone through the baptism of the Red Sea, next thing, bread from heaven. Just as we met Smyrna, life out of death, next thing, bread from heaven. I will give to eat of the hidden manna. Pergamos are nourished by the hidden manna, plus they have a new name. I don't really know what this new name is about, but I'll note it because it'll come back in a minute, and maybe some of you can help me explain what it means, because I'm not sure. But I've seen what I need to see. Light, water, bread. We've established the basis of God's name. So what has to come next? Oh, hang on. Lampstand, summary of the bottom layer. Lampstand, life out of death, manna, and new name. Jesus creates a nation. And Jesus moves on to day 4. Now we know we're going to have like 2 elements here, and we can predict we're going to have some sort of return of light, but this time it's going to be something to do with judgment, with rulership, govern your day, govern your night. What do you see?
Rule with iron rod.
Yes, to him that overcomes I will give to rule all nations with a rod of iron. He will govern their day and govern their night. I'm not making this up. These are right out of the verses you're looking at. And that's why I like to do it this way, so you're not just listening to me, whom you shouldn't trust for anything, but you're looking at your scriptures, which you can trust for everything. But if it's really going to be day 4, ping, we need a bit of light. Someone give me some light. What else? What else do they get?
Morning star.
And I will give him the morning star, which is exactly stars and candlesticks, a complete reflection and a development of day 1 Ephesus. So the elements of Ephesus show up again in Thyatira. They had to. Why did they have to? Because this is God's name. You can't spell it any way you like. God's name is spelt one way, spelt this way. That's how he spells it. Beautiful. Oh dear. Day 5. Sardis. What are you going to see? What? Someone said that back there? You have the reputation of being alive, but you're dead. It's day 5. It's the bad day. Day of the serpent, day of death. Notice again, just like Smyrna, we're tempted to say dead church, which makes sense because it's the right answer, but notice how we have to mention both elements. Smyrna wasn't just you'll get a crown of life. If you're faithful till death, you'll get a crown of life, both elements. Sardis the same. Your reputation, everyone thinks you're alive, but man, your church is dead. Sardis are the opposite of Smyrna. Smyrna, a life in death, life out of death. Sardis, a death in life. The words are right here in the actual scriptural quotes. I'm not putting anything on top of them. And finally, a man to lead. Where do we see a sign of leadership or control or authority in the letter to Philadelphia? You see the new name, don't you? Now that's interesting, because who else had the new name? Which one? Ha! Yes, number 3. So, new name, new name. That's the link between the two. I don't know what it means, but I do notice it's these two that got it. I know these are linked, right? Stars of Ephesus shows up in the Star of Thyatira. I know these are linked as opposite, life out of death, death in life. These must have some sort of link, and the link is the new name. Why is that? I don't know. But clearly, it's a link. Anything else that shows a sign of authority?
Crown.
Is there a crown? I must have missed the crown. I saw this. I like the crown. What verse is that? Someone help me out. Verse 11. 11. Thank you. Okay, I didn't read that far. You know, that's a lot of reading. I got to verse 8. The words of the Holy One, the true one, who has the key of David. Listen to the sound of authority here. Who opens and no one can shut it. Who shuts and no one can open it. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut There's an authority there. Crown would be a good addition. I like that a lot. The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. How do we know that pillar? Well, pillar holds things up, but who else were called pillars in the new church? Which apostles? You're absolutely right.
James, Peter.
Particularly Peter, James, and John. Yes, that's right. They were called the pillars of the new church. And we know that they were leaders. So this is a leadership word, the pillar in the temple. The one who conquers, I'll make him a leader. And he will have, as someone helpfully pointed out, the new name. So Philadelphia become leaders, men who lead. And they share the new name with Pergamos, showing that you have a link between 3 and 6, which we knew because we built it. We saw it in God's name. So that's a slide we already had. We built the bottom layer, and from there we saw Thyatira would rule all nations with a rod of iron and would have the morning star. Sardis, tragically, were death in life, the opposite of Smyrna, and Philadelphia, the key holders, who would have that new name. And theoretically, that would produce a church of eternal peace. One problem, humans. So unfortunately, it doesn't work. Never works fully yet. But behind it all, that's the process that Jesus used to build his church. And like I say, for the point, if you want to look at your own ecclesia, which it's not a question of pick one, in a way, every element is required to reflect the name of God. That allows us to visit this for the last time this morning and see Jesus writing to at least the first 6 of those 7 churches. Sequence number 6, stars and candlesticks, life out of death Smyrna, hidden manna Pergamos, rod of rulership and morning star Thyatira, Sardis are dead, and Philadelphia hold the keys to the doors that no one else can open or shut. So you realize these sequence works. Every time I introduce them to you, I'm introducing to you what's called a file, not a rank, right? I'm introducing you to a vertical stripe. But feel free to notice the horizontal stripes. Feel free to notice that this should all work this way as well. The serpent out of the sea of day 5, is going to be the same family of serpents that bit them in the wilderness, is going to be a representation of a dead church. Serpents, right? And the Son of God, the first Son of God, the man called Jesus who led them into the promised land, the key holder of David, they're all building a pattern that's very consistent and common. So it should work horizontally as well as vertically. So feel free to check the rank as well as the file. Okay? And that's the manner in which both God and his Son authorized to duplicate the works of his Father. That's the manner in which they work. And I find it very beautiful to look at. Tomorrow we'll finish off these 4 remaining sequences. Thank you for your attention.